Sometimes in life, knowledge is often the lecture we never knew we needed. Welcome to Term 2 of the Nebula Academy. I got an email from someone that I don't know who was at the verge of committing suicide. And the email he sent to me was actually his suicide note. We all assume that we are good people until we are put in certain situations. For you to be a good person, you have to know your potential for evil. They chose to remain fully human, fully thinking, and fully responsible. If you stand away from the herd, you become vulnerable, you become an easy target of the powerful. I have recommended 4 things you should read. The Ordinary Men by Christopher R. Brownie, The Lucifer Effect, How Good People Turn Evil by Philip Zimbardo. Here, every word carries insight, every moment invites reflection, and more importantly, every voice matters. This is a new season, a season where wisdom is flowing, growing, and taking roots. Welcome to the Nebula Academy, where wisdom speaks and knowledge listens. So welcome to Term 2 of the Nebula Academy. And over the last 2-3 months, we have seen interactions, we have seen questions from our Term 1 video. And in Term 1, we discussed 3 major things. So we discussed the monster at the door, the war within, the meaning in darkness, pain, awakening. And in those particular 3 modules, of which we uploaded on YouTube and IG, we got a lot of comments, we got a lot of interactions. I personally got a lot of interactions. I got emails sent to me, understanding pain, people going through very, I want to say evil, but I'll be careful to use the word evil. People going through very difficult times and how they are supposed to navigate those times. And most of the time, those questions were asked to me argumentatively. They were not necessarily asked to me in such of, oh, what you said helped me, in as much as I got, appreciated by the things that was said. But they were asked in a way, Kelechi, you said this, but this is what my life is about. I'll give you a particular instance, and I hope to start with this. I got an email in February, and this was on a Saturday morning. I got an email from someone that I don't know. Now I know him, who was at the verge of committing suicide. And the email he sent to me was actually his suicide note. I was working this particular afternoon, and I got an email, and the email subject says, "It is all over, I'm tired of life," something around those lines. And I said, okay, from who is this? Do I know this person personally? Before I opened it, because again, we're in a cyber world where this could be phishing emails or whatnot. But I opened it, and the email was a very interesting email. I never felt so connected to someone that I didn't know. And he had explained how life has been hard for him and how he lost his mom, who was the only parent that raised him, who was suffering from ulcer. He has been without a job for, 6 months. He has tried everything. He has prayed. His dad, an estranged parent, doesn't care about him, and he wants to end his life. And when I saw the email, I paused and I thought, what is the best response I can give to someone who I do not know? But in order to encourage him to stay alive. So I sent an email, and I said, if you kill yourself, then what happens? What happens after that? Don't you want to wait to see how these things end? Yes, you're going through hard times and things are difficult, but are you not enthusiastic enough or curious enough to watch how your life ends up after 10, 15 years? Why do you want to cut it short? Why do you want to end the movie even when the movie hasn't even started? And a lot of my friends that I shared this email with thought I was being harsh, but apparently that was the best response I could give. So I sent him my number, and I called him, and I spoke to him, and we spoke for several hours, and I've checked in on him, and by God's mercy, he has a job now, he's settling down, he wants to leave, basically. But these are all the outcomes of the teachings from Term 1. Term 2 is going to be very different, because Term 1 dealt with pain externally. The things that we go through, the government, the country we live in, we know it's not the best. The situations that meet us, either unprepared or prepared. the internal conflicts, the things you want to be and what you don't want, and the things you want to do that you don't do, and the things you don't want to do that you do. That sounds like Paul. Right, so that is a brief summary of term 1. Term 2 is going to take a very different approach, because now we are speaking to the evil within you. Now, I have to be very careful here, because some people know there's no evil within me. No. We're going to speak to the ability to be nefarious, the shadow within, like Carl Jung calls it. We all assume that we are good people until we are put in certain situations. So the first module is called the monster within. And there are a lot of things that I'm going to dismantle in this particular module. The first is, and I have this as a theory, well, not a theory, but a hypothesis, that evil is created by evil people, but sustained by good people who are thoughtless. There's a book by Hannah Arendt called The Trial out of Each Man, The Banality of Evil. I like to call the book Banality of Evil, but that's the subtitle of the book. So, in 1961, this is after World War II had ended, and there was this interrogation of a man called Adolf Eichmann in Jerusalem. This interrogation happened in Jerusalem. He was taken to, it was in the glass house in the courtroom in Jerusalem. And Hannah had gone to observe it, just to observe that interrogation, the monster. How could you commit such nefarious activities against the Jews? So she went into the courtroom hoping to see a monster, someone who hated the Jews, who was anti-Semitic. But contrary to what she expected, she saw a man who was normal, who was not a who wasn't a fanatic, someone who wasn't anti-Semitic. After her observations, she wrote this book. Now I'm going to move away from abstract to concrete. So imagine if you have an experience where you find something very relatable, where you were being kidnapped by some gang members, and you went through maybe a week or 2 weeks of torture, and police accosted these particular gang members, and they were brought to the court for trial before justice has its way. And they're observing such person who had put you through such very painful time, and you're unable to see the evil within that person. You're able to see the reason why that person actually committed that offense. That was the kind of experience that Hannah had. So, who was Adolf Eichmann? That's the question you ask. Adolf Eichmann was just a man at the decks in Nazi Germany during the Holocaust. He was the one that transported the Jews from a particular location to the gas chambers. For him, he was doing his job. For him, he wasn't bad. He wasn't evil. He was just, I am doing what I've been told to do. I've been employed to carry out some certain rules and certain activities. I do not hate the Jews. I do not hate humanity. I have no intrinsic hatred for any group of people. I am just concerned about doing my job. And when they asked him during his interrogation, what they found was that each man was a good person, or at least, in the words of Hannah, was banal. Now, banal means commonplace, ordinary. It means nothing out of place. So she realized that each man carried out those activities through thoughtlessness. He wasn't thinking about the consequences of his action. He wasn't thinking about the consequences that the people who were at the tail end of this bureaucratic system, because it's a very complex bureaucratic system, he wasn't thinking about those people. And what she found, was he had referenced Immanuel Kant. Now, Immanuel Kant is someone that's going to come in Module 2, which we talk about the good, evil, and the fading light. Here we talk about absolute morality versus relative morality. So each one had referenced Immanuel Kant, who was also a German philosopher, a moral philosopher. He was an important moral philosopher. So two things I'm going to say before I continue. First, I think it's important that you read the book. The name of the book is The Trial of Adolf Eichmann in Jerusalem. The subtitle is The Banality of Evil by Hannah Arendt. The second book, which I'm also going to reference is The Ordinary Men by Christopher Browning. So those are the two books. I just want to take note of it. So let's go back. So she realized that this man wasn't wicked. She realized that this man wasn't in himself nefarious. And what shook her to her bones was that he referenced a moral philosopher called Immanuel Kant. Now we're going to talk about Immanuel Kant in Module 2. But this was a man who was far away from the concentration camps, from the war. He was so far off, he couldn't feel the pain of those people far off. So it's like a president or a governor who just signs policies or signs decrees without feeling the consequences of it, because the other people, the people who are facing the consequences of his actions, are far off. Now, when I was doing this study, I found, well, we can't blame the man now, because the level of morbidity to his actions weren't obvious to him. He wasn't seeing, people dying from gas chambers. But that takes us to the second part of this model, which is The Ordinary Men by Christopher R. Browning.